Welcome to another week of the Weekly Sizzle. Megan, Sean, this week we're joined by James Vitrano from Ruby Tuesday. So right after our great intro, we'll get back to you with the Weekly Sizzle. And we're back.
We're back.
That's one of the,
One more time?
That's one of the, we're back.
There we go.
That's my, I can't think of it.
Well, James, before we started, James was saying that I need to have a signature move. And I said, pets spayed or neutered. Any ideas before we start?
We're going to go with the classic. I love it. Yeah.
Get your pets spayed and neutered, especially your fish.
Well, this a comment on that?
I don't know. All right. It's one of those weekly sizzles. And it's going to start this way and it's going to end this way. So buckle up. So the 8 things we need to talk about in franchising. Megan, I'm going to start with you. We're wrapping up our top players in franchise development. You want to talk about some of the interviews that you completed there?
Yeah, today we have our dog from Hungry Howie's, and he talked a lot about so he started as a psychotherapist and then went into franchising, which is a pretty interesting transition, and the reason for that was because he enjoyed helping people achieve the American dream and giving them the tools that they needed to start their own business and make a living for themselves, and I think that's a pretty noble cause to want to get into franchise development, so it's really incredible to hear his story.
Yeah, we had a lot of great features. You can still look at the old covers. We're now starting our new issue. But if you look at our last issue, Key Players in Franchise Development, and if you go to our LinkedIn page, you're able to see all the stories that we've posted on there as well. So interesting stories. I'm going to go over to James because I think it's cool that you're an attorney and you lead franchise sales. Tell us a little bit about how you got into franchise development now.
Yeah, despite being an attorney, which I have to apologize to my wife a lot at home for the opportunity to actually get into franchise development and operations was really enticing to me, similar to what you were saying a few moments ago. The ability to give people the opportunity to be successful, to control their own destiny, to experience not only the Ruby Tuesday brand, but the ability to connect with the public and to build their own future, both from an entrepreneurial standpoint as well as a capitalism standpoint is just exciting to me. And I think it's a wonderful way that we're able to help grow business communities and future businesses around the country.
That's great. And obviously we have James joining us this week. I think what's cool about his brand that he's with right now is just the comeback story, which we featured a lot of brands that are going through similar paths. If you want to learn more about James' brand, go to rubytuesday.1851franchise.com, and anybody who's watching this can go ahead and check out all of their news. Megan, the next issue is on franchisees and how franchisees are being successful, and obviously both of you just talked about it. You want to give a little bit of preview as this issue just went live.
Yeah, we're featuring, I think we have over 30 different franchisees from different brands, and just kind of talking to each of them to get a feel for why they chose a specific brand, sort of what they've gotten out of it, and kind of just getting a sense of the on-the-ground story of what it's like to be a franchisee.
Okay, so let's move on to number 3, our third story of 8. Now, you're going to see a little bit of a trend here, and I think the two of you can provide some great feedback on this. We were talking about this at lunch, how are brands performing as we wrap up the year, and Sean and I have talked about this before on the Weekly Sizzle. With an election in place, does that start creating some uneasy feelings from a growth standpoint? But one story that we had on here, and Megan made sure this was featured this week, was that restaurant businesses have hit a standstill in the first half of 2016. Sean, do you see that as they were trying to watch what was the trend in the election and to ramp up in the second half? Because we do have some great brands that are experiencing some significant growth. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's come back to the fact that people are just kind of sitting back and waiting to see what's going to happen to the election. It's going to have a lot of impact on what's going to happen moving forward. The restaurant industry is experiencing a lot of challenges with, as we stated before, minimum wage and other insurance and things like that. So I think there's a lot of sitting back and waiting going on. And I think the brands that take advantage of plowing through it and continue to try to grow and expand are going to benefit from it. Anytime you slow something down, I always say development is like a huge locomotive. It takes so much energy and inertia to get it going that if you pull the brakes on it and then think you can just start it back up again, it's going to be challenging. So for the brands, my recommendation is don't slow down and wait. Just keep doing what you're doing, and then eventually things will continue to grow and go from there.
James, I'm going to go to you for this story because I find it somewhat connected back to the Ruby Tuesday repositioning. But we have another story on 1851 that millennial customers are now taking over a larger piece of the pizza category. That consumers within the millennial generation will represent $45 million in sales to pizza brands this year. As more data comes out on the millennial customer, how is Ruby Tuesday repositioning its brand to be better positioned for that next wave of customer?
I think any industry, especially the restaurant business, needs to be ready for that next generation of consumers. And the millennial generation is that power, both internationally and domestically. So from a Ruby Tuesday standpoint, I think you've seen in the news lately our repositioning as it relates to closing stores so that we can focus on that refresh and that refurb to really introduce ourselves back in to the current consumer generation. Also, our recent foray into the digital social media side of things has really helped generate some awareness at the millennial level. And then our focus on our garden bar really will sort of drive in that health-conscious, fresh customer with that new look and new feel as we start rolling that out across the country.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And obviously, it's not just the pizza brands that are benefiting from the millennial candidate or customer. It's every brand, and everybody's taking a look at who could be that next wave of customer to propel their brands forward. Another story that we had is Famous Toastery is breaking into Long Island, and obviously we feature a lot of brands that are growing throughout the country. Megan, you want to talk a little bit about the Better Breakfast segment because we've been covering a bunch of that.
I mean, I think there's just a lack of that in terms of choices for breakfast. People want something better and fresher. They want better ingredients, and Famous Toastery delivers, and they're kind of just rising to the demand.
We have another story out of QSR Magazine on how quick service restaurants are finding the right financial balance and how they're starting to balance out food costs and labor costs. James, I'll go back to you with this, with readjusting a brand and evaluating every part of the P&L. How much have you been doing that as you're figuring out how to refranchise Ruby Tuesday?
I think every brand needs to constantly be evaluating that to ensure efficiencies and effectiveness from a scalability standpoint for its franchisees, not only corporate-owned locations, but franchisees. Plus, you factor in the changes to the minimum wage and the overtime regulations. We constantly are evaluating our labor model, as well as working with our incumbent franchisees to ensure that they're aware of the changes that are coming. I think to really get at the point is you constantly have to go into innovation and experimenting into what options exist from a labor and staffing standpoint. What we're doing at Ruby Tuesday is really taking a fresh new approach each time we are revisiting our structure across the corporate spectrum.
Yeah, I love that. And then next story, and you can see this, it's flowing positive and negative depending on what brand you're talking to about how are they approaching things. Are they looking at the glass half full or are they looking at it half empty? Sean, another story that we had is that as the demand for prime real estate goes up, that's actually creating a fluctuation in how much volume the fast casual restaurants can do because a brand like Ruby Tuesday going into a top tier space. Now it's more people fighting over those territories more than ever. So now there's less real estate coming available. So therefore, if you're being pushed to sub-tier locations, it's affecting your sales. As you were in franchise development, how vital was real estate to the sales process, and how often would franchisees want to take maybe the cheaper way out when looking at real estate, and now they're almost forced to do that?
Yeah, I mean, with restaurants or any brick and mortar franchise opportunity, real estate has always been the big driver, especially if signage is your main kind of driver. So roadside visibility is always what people are going for when it comes to the brick and mortar locations. Now that those are getting harder and we're in a market where real estate is a little bit tougher than it was 4 or 5 years ago, you start going into B locations. If you're going to go into B locations, you're going to rely much more heavily on localized marketing. So when I was with brands where we were getting those B type locations, not being able to secure those A locations, we would really focus with the franchisee is that you got to be able to execute from a marketing perspective, whether it's digital approach and looking at it as not relying on that signage, not roadside visibility, because you're not getting those A locations. So as brands begin to see that they're going to be facing that moving forward until maybe there's a correction in the marketplace, you got to take that into consideration that when you're selecting franchisees, that they understand that localized marketing is going to be a big part of it. So you could subsidize some of that rent with marketing, but don't just rely on another location and then just you build it and they will come. You got to drive traffic.
That's great. So, and last, number 8, we're going to go back to James with this one because he's our special guest. As a benefit with 1851, we get a lot of exposure to a lot of different brands that are trying to do the right things, build great infrastructure, build great leadership, build great product, and then deliver a good opportunity out to you, those that are looking at potentially buying a franchise. Ruby Tuesday is one of those brands that is making its comeback and saying, let's look at all the good. Let's get rid of some of the ugly and let's reposition this to grow. And one of the things that we get out of having a day with James is that we get an insight into how Ruby Tuesday is planning to do that. One of the things that I found most interesting is that you're going to rely on franchisees, the ones that are in your system, to help carve the path for the future. So just give us a little bit of a glimpse into what people can expect from Ruby Tuesday from an investment standpoint going forward.
From a franchise or franchisee standpoint, I think what you're going to see from Ruby over the next few months to a year or two is really a collaboration with its incumbent domestic franchisees and an expansion in the international franchise market. We are constantly in communication with our domestic franchisees in the United States on a weekly basis. We have our operations group out in the field with them very, very frequently. And so there is frequent communication back and forth amongst us relative to their needs and the issues they're facing, both from a restaurant operator as well in the industry. Internationally, we're very blessed to have some really great operators and franchisees out across the globe. And the market is very good internationally for American brands. And Ruby Tuesday is one of those iconic ones that really has some good traction. So hopefully you'll see in the next few months to a year some really good stabilization and relationship strength with our incumbent franchisees domestically, hopefully some domestic growth, certainly some international expansion as we look to sort of expand Ruby Tuesday from what it was to what it will be.
That's fantastic. So again, for more information on Ruby Tuesday, go to their page at rubytuesday.1851franchise.com. They're looking for the qualified multi-unit operator to look at their brand as a potential investment. Another great brand to take a look at all their news and learn more about their brand. So for Megan and Sean and James, I'm Nick. I will not end with get your pets spayed and neutered. Maybe a pen toss. Just kidding. That's the Weekly Sizzle. See ya.